Are we live?
I think so. Hey everyone, welcome to the stream hosted by myself and Alexandra. We're both coaches for Run It Once under the Essential program. And during the stream, if you guys would like to sign up for Essential, you can get 50% off for a month by using the code exclamation mark discount, which I'll put in chat now. Okay, all good?
Okay, all good. Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra, and today we're going to do a hand review stream. These are some hands that I've played after holidays, after not playing for a while, and I think some of them are not played really great. So, yeah, we're going to jump into this, and if you like this hand review session, feel free to join our Discord community for more fun contact and to interact with us. Paul is going to link it in the YouTube chat. All good? Sorry, just a little bit of sound problem. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. Sorry for this. So, all good to jump into the handstand?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, unfortunately, I don't really remember in some of these hands who the guys were. So who the villains were, but based on the stack sizes, we can assume pretty much he was a recreational. I'm just not sure what his tendencies were. So against the rack, I'm going to call here. Although I think with GG rake structure, this is a fold against a rag opening MP. It goes check check. Would you consider dunking here or doing anything else on the flop?
No, I think it's standard. I think, like you
Yeah.
said, on GG, I would think about just folding pre because of the rake being so high. But yeah, all fine.
Yeah, I think it depends a bit of the tendencies of the recreational and basically how much money he's losing and how much we expect to win from him. Because obviously, if this guy was a 21-7 type of recreational, then this is probably a terrible call.
Yeah, if he's got obviously a much bigger VPIP and he's really passive post and you can over-realize equity, then I think it'd be okay, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Here the turn's an ace, and usually we should be quite polar here, like even against the recreational, once he checks back, they probably have a lot of ace-x here. So I wouldn't be looking to probe very often with hands that have no equity. And this one does have a gut shot, but it's not great. So I think I would just be looking to check and maybe bluff some reverse. Would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously we're going to be quite polar on this turn, so yeah, I would use something with a bit more equity than 4-7.
Okay, I hope we go for a check. And now on a deuce river. Obviously, this is not like a huge spot, but I personally like reviewing these hands because I think they are quite frequent, and I think it's quite important to improve our thought processes in this spot. So here I was thinking if I should bluff this hand because obviously I have 7 high. And now thinking back on this hand, I think I remember this guy wasn't the type of really passive recreational, and he was c-betting at some decent frequencies, bluffing sometimes. So I kind of expected that if he takes this line on an ace turn, which is usually overbluffed by recreationals, I kind of expect him to have some kind of showdown value. Not sure he would fold king high, but on the other hand, if we fold like 9 high, that's already good for us. So yeah, I'm actually unsure if this bluff is winning against this type of rack here, but it just felt way too nitty to take this to showdown. So I think I decided to bluff, and I'm not sure about the sizing. But before we see what I did, what would you do?
Yeah, I would be tempted to just turn this into a bluff now. We're blocking the type of ace X that he might choose to check back on the turn, like ace 4, ace 7. So I think he is going to just have maybe a bunch of like weak pairs in his range, and then maybe like queen high and king high. I think if we use a small size, some recreationals are still called with queen high in this spot once the board pairs. So yeah, I'd look to go for an overbet here. Obviously, we rep like quite thinly, and we will have a thin value range, but I don't think a recreational is gonna pay too much attention to that. And I think if they get here with what we think their range is going to be, like that queen high, king high, weak pairs, I think then they'll start to overfold that range to an overbet.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm not sure if I considered an overbet or I don't exactly remember what I did here. Let's see. Yeah, I bet 3/4. I don't think I like this because I just don't think it gains enough fold equity. I think it also depends on the reads. If I remember correctly, I might have had a note on him that he delayed c-bet air half pot once or twice, so that kind of leads me to think that when he doesn't delay c-bet air, he probably has some showdown value. So I agree with you that I think overbetting in this spot would be quite nice. Don't think he has ace-x or deuce-x quite often, and the other parts of his range we can probably get to fold with an overbet, to overfold with an overbet, but not really with this size. I don't think I like this much.
Yeah, I think villains are probably just going to continue, with a call with hands like king jack or king queen here. Yeah, I choose to overbet and maybe even sometimes just go for against specifically a recreational. We think they're extremely capped, even a check jam sometimes, because I think they'd massively overfold, and they might also go for too thin value on the river sometimes. Yeah, I don't think I like this size either.
Yeah, I don't think I like this size, but I don't think I like a check jam because we just risk a lot of money. I mean, yeah, he's actually shorter, but still, I think when he bets the river, so it's not that I necessarily think he won't overfold to a check jam, but I think he's going to check back a bunch of combos that beats us, obviously. That would just fall to an overbet. So I think that line is probably better. And he can have a deuce X from time to time, and we kind of risk a lot here to check jam. He's not completely capped. Okay, should we get into the next one then?
Well, should we see what did he call?
Oh.
We'd like to see results.
Does it matter? We are pros. We are not results oriented.
When we see his queen high call, we can say how bad it was.
No, but he did call with fives and.
Yeah, I think this is the thing that you're just going to see in their range. A lot is like pocket threes, pocket fours, pocket fives, maybe some 6x, and then as I said, queen high, king high, maybe even some jack high. So I think that's why we want to go for that overbet on the river, just because I think this is exactly what their range is going to be like on the river almost always.
Yeah, exactly. Is there, although I would just like to mention that for me personally, I think there are definitely recreationals against which this bluff is not good for an overbet either.
Yeah, I agree.
And not against an unknown, I would probably always bluff this, but against someone who I know is really, really stationing these lines, and seen him probably calling fives here before, then I would probably refrain from bluffing and take 7 high to showdown like a neat.
Yeah, one thing we just do in that line though is then start to overbet much thinner for value, right? It's like most of our ace-x then can just go for a big overbet.
Yeah, for sure, and that's basically where the AVN exploits come from against an opponent like that. So, yeah, good point. Okay, now we open fours on the button and we fold to this 3-bet. I guess we don't. Yeah, I don't think this is a good call. So first of all, my opening size on the button, I recently started opening 3x against regulars as well, and that is because I ran some pool analysis on GG, and it just seems like population massively under 3-bets from the big blind, and I think this kind of exploits that. Of course, you could open 2x if you expect them to overfold to that size. I don't think it matters much. But once I open 3x and he makes it 13, and it's not a huge 3-bet, but these hands are already break-even defense in a lower rake structure to a smaller 3-bet, so due to all these factors, I think we should just fold these low pairs. I'm not sure why I called, I'm not sure. I think one reason to start calling these hands always would be if, we're facing someone who's really, really passive and doesn't really see bet much, doesn't really fight for pots, then due to our equity realization, it becomes a bit of a better call and might become slightly winning. Still not great. Anything to add on pre-flop, Paul?
No, I was just going to back up that point there. I play in a pool very similar where you can get a lot of reads on players, and if you are playing against someone who's extremely passive, you can over-defend pre-flop because you're going to be able to put them in tough spots post-flop, but that does depend on your ability to put them in tough spots post-flop. If you're just going to be playing passive yourself and just trying to reach showdown and not sometimes turning hands into bluffs on the right textures, then you're better off just always folding these hands.
Yeah, I agree, because actually these hands are supposed to be bluffed on a lot of textures. I think this is one of the spots. Okay, now I remember this. This was played against a regular who was really trappy. Like I had a lot of notes on him that he made really weird slow plays in like multiple spots, and he was also. I mean, his stats look quite stationy, right? He had like a really big one to showdown and folding quite low to certain bets in certain spots, but now thinking about it, maybe he's just over slow playing hands, and that might also lead to those kind of stats, I think. So okay. He goes for a check, and I think this hand is actually going to be a stab very, very often. It benefits from protection, right? Because it gets to fold something like, I don't know, queen jack of clubs. It can get called by worse hands like ace king, ace queen. It has a backdoor flush draw, has some kind of backdoor equity against better hands. And yeah, if it gets check raised, I don't think it cares that much. I assume it's, maybe it's not a great spot, but overall I think I would stab this hand way more often than not. Anything to add?
Yeah, so I've been doing a little bit of study on these boards recently, specifically 9 high and below in small blind burst button spots. So what I've found is in these spots, obviously, small blind should be going for a very polarized seat bet, so betting for a big size and then check in. And a pattern has emerged where on the more dynamic boards that are better for imposition, they obviously have to check a lot more because they connect to the boards a lot less. And then on those boards, whilst we do still have quite a high stab-in frequency, it's not as high as on boards where they should have quite a high bet-in frequency, if that makes sense. So on this board, like 762, we are supposed to have a high bet-in frequency, but then if we were on, say, a board like 932, which is obviously much better for small blind because they're going to be 3-betting a lot of 9x, both players shouldn't really have 3s or 2s. They should be betting their overpairs and their 9x at such a high frequency that when they check, they're much more capped. So yeah, in this spot, I think I would still, against population, just go for a small stab. And the reason that I do that is because whilst I think Villain 151 is going to find all of his value check raises, I'm not sure he's going to find the required amount of bluff check raises. So I think in this spot, you get to play your hands pretty face up against a lot of like villains that are not very good. So if you probe here and you get check raised, I think it's going to be under check raised with their bluff portion of the range, and we can overfold. And I think 4s is fine. maybe that's a reason to start to check back fours with a spade specifically, because we have a bit more equity and bet fours when we don't have a spade. But again, then when we do bet and we just get called, I think they're going to define their range a lot more to those ace high, king high, even queen high with backdoor type of hands.
Yeah, I agree with that. Even though, like, even fours with a spade, based on the fact that we just don't expect population to check raise enough, that means we're not going to get check raised at enough of a frequency, so it becomes a bit less of a concern. So for this reason, I would still mostly stab. And as you said, if I get check raised, I think it's a comfortable fold in practice. In theory, we might want to still call, but again, we're not playing against solvers, so
yeah. One thing Tequila Mockingbird asked it in the chat was, what would be the lowest pocket pair you pure call versus that size 3 bet on GG? Or in general, he didn't specify GG.
Well, I think in general it changes things a little bit because you don't pay that much rake, but I think usually sevens should be pure calls just because small blind is supposed to squeeze or 3-bet sixes himself sometimes. So when you have a pair that's higher than his lowest 3-bet, then we are supposed to always call. But then you can, always face an 8, or he can slightly increase his size or so on, and maybe in that spot we want to fold sevens as well. So we always need to know who we are playing against and to be conscious of the size of the 3-bet, but as a rule of thumb, I think sevens I would always defend. Is there anything else in the chat?
No, that's all for now.
Okay, so we stab, we get called, and the turn is a 9 of diamonds, which I assume is quite a good card for us. It does bring us some pair plus trade draws, some pairs that we're gonna stab with, and I don't think it improves Wieland's range very much. I mean, he could check all 9s here from time to time, but I think most of his check calling range will be some traps plus some overcards. So I imagine we can do quite a bit of betting on this turn in theory, but I also think we need to be careful to not bet hands that have a terrible timing, that don't really want to get check raised or check shoved here, because on these double flush draws, really drawy boards, I think that's going to happen quite often. What I would add here is I think you might want to turn descending to a bluff sometimes, but if we think of Wieland's range, he's going to have a bunch of overcards. So we still have some showdown value. It's just that we're not really realizing our equity too good with this particular hand. And exploitatively thinking, I'm not sure if I want to start bluffing this guy knowing that he's the type of guy that's capable of trapping, that's capable of having some check raises here, and that's probably going to have a bit of a stronger range in this spot than the average opponent. What do you think, Paul?
So yeah, exploitatively, if this is the guy that is trapping a lot more than he should be, then I think I would prefer to see us check a bit more often. But as you said, this card is really good for our stabbing ranges. It doesn't improve villain at all. So I would actually think about I would definitely continue here sometimes with pocket fours. Villain is going to have some hands like a7, maybe some you bet 1/3, so maybe it doesn't call hands like ace8 or ace9 on the flop. But I think he's going to have some hands that are currently beating us, but that are going to be always folding by the river. And we need to have some bluffs, and I think something like pocket fours here is a nice hand to bluff. We're not blocking his call in range that calls on turn, folds on the river. We can also still get value from overcards as well. And it doesn't really matter if we get check shoved on with this hand. It's not like we're going to be folding a lot of equity either. So yeah, I think this could go either way.
Yeah, I totally agree with your thought process, and this is why I marked this hand. If you remember, you said at the beginning of this hand that you don't want to call these hands if you're going to play them passively, and I completely agree with you. So that's why I think this is kind of a mistake in this hand because it's just not consistent. Like I think the pre-flop call is bad if I'm going to be reluctant to bluff against this guy because first of all I think he is over trapping, but he also seems to have quite stationary stats. So for this reason, I thought this bluff is going to be lower EV against this guy than against the population, and then I thought we can still win at showdown from time to time. So yeah, I decided to check back, but I think we should just always fold pre-flop.
Yeah, and the difference here is against most players in this spot, they shouldn't really have many 9x plus now. So most of their pocket tens plus are going to be check raises on the flop. So against most players, you can start to bluff here because their range is very weak, but currently beating pocket fours or has a lot of equity against pocket fours. But against this villain, if you do think he is the type to trap more often, then obviously that's where you're running into some trouble. And then also if you know that, like you say, make the fold pre, because if you're going to get into post flop spots where you don't want to turn a hand that should be bluffed a fair amount of the time into not into a bluff, then yeah, as you said, we're just not going to be getting ourselves into nice spots.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I remember now a hand that I played against this guy I found it really funny as I 3-bet him with queens, big blind versus under the gun, and the board was I don't know what some low board. I checked for some reason, he checked back, the turn is a queen, I check again, he checks back, and the river is a blank, I bet 1/3, he shoves, I call and he has aces, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's not the only note, but just a lot of weird traps in spots like this. Okay, it goes check, and now on the river he checks again. And I think here we probably have a mandatory bluff. Because even if he's trappy, I don't really see him having a lot of 10x that get here with this line and then check again. And I think his overpairs are going to be put in a really, really tough spot because against this guy I would bet a bit thinner. Again, I don't think he has 10x, so if I get here with any 2 pairs, I think that's probably good enough to shove. Maybe not 7-6. I don't know. But yeah, I think this run out is really, really good for us. And we have quite a lot of hands that would shove here. And also, as I said on the turn, I am conscious of the fact that if I have a flush draw here, if it's not like a combo draw or I don't know, maybe ace king, which I don't have, I don't want to bet that because I really don't want to get check shoves. So I would check back here a bunch of flush draws. So by the river, I will actually have flush draws. I will have a lot of 10x. So I think, we can shove all of those.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that villain is going to have a lot of 10x in their range to begin with. Once they just check call flop, I think a lot of hands containing the 10 are either going to be check raises or probably just folds. And then I agree with you that on the turn, like this is really important, is that when we're on this turn, we've stabbed flop. It is really important to check back turn with most of your flushes because for the reason Alexandra mentioned, you don't want to be getting check jammed on. So yeah, you have a bunch of much more 5x in your range than him. You have more 10x in your range, and obviously have more sets and flushes as well. So yeah, definitely just be jamming in this spot.
What I'm wondering is, do you think it's worth having some smaller bets in this spot with hands like, I don't know, 2 pairs, for example, or do you think we only want to shove?
I guess it depends on first of all, I'd say it depends on who you're playing as a villain. If you're playing against a recreational or a bad regular who isn't going to adjust to you, then I think you can do whatever you want to do on the river, right? Like, you're not going to be punished. Something you'll often hear like good players say is that they only want to execute like a one size in strategy on a flop, or one size in strategy on a river, or something like that. That's obviously only necessary if the person you're playing against is good enough, first of all, to understand that you play in multiple sizes, and also good enough to exploit you using different sizes with different portions of your range. So if this was a really bad regular or a recreational, then yes, I would have different sizes. If this was a decent regular, then I would just stick to one size, and it would just be all in.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not really sure yet if he's decent or not decent. He's weird. He's a weird rug. Probably not decent. So yeah, hope I no no I hate this. My defense, I was really rusty in this session. Yeah, that's one thing, but I don't know. Looking back at it and thinking, what went wrong with this hand, because I obviously know, thinking now about it, that I should bluff here. I think in game, sometimes if I mark some guys as having a certain tendency, such as this guy being, overcalling spots, or other people being over aggressive in certain spots, that I just either refrain from bluffing in some spots that I shouldn't, or call down in some spots that I shouldn't if I think he's really aggressive. And I think that might be some leak that I have that I'm gonna be a bit more conscious of. And I think that's what happened here.
Yeah, I think that's probably a leak many people have.
One second, I will let you tell people that until I run to the toilet, because it's quite urgent, okay?
Okay. I forgot what I was saying now. So yeah, I think that's probably a leak that a lot of people have, and that's actually like one of the reasons why I highly recommend people, when they first start out playing poker, don't use a HUD, for instance, because a lot of the time people will see stats, they won't understand just how many stats you need on a player for the stats to be relevant and for you to have confidence in those stats, and people will way over adjust and then not take certain lines that they should be taking. Obviously, in this hand with Alexandra, I think she's good enough that she should always recognize that this is just a bluff, even if the guy is a very stationary player, and he does trap a lot. He's still just going to have a very, very weak hand in this line. But as Alexandra said, she'd been not playing poker all over Christmas, and this was one of her sessions back, so she's going to have some mistakes like this. And like, these are the mistakes that you see in a bunch of players, where they don't take some aggression that they should. And it's what we were talking about pre-flop. If you get into these situations and you call in hands like pocket threes, pocket fours, pocket five, pocket sixes pre-flop against three bets, like, you have to understand that on a bunch of runouts, they're supposed to be mandatory bluffs. And it's not just on boards like this. Like, another example would be on ace high boards. When players go for range bets, or for like 25 or 33%, we're often supposed to start having some raises with some of these lower pocket pairs on low ace X boards. So yeah, there's going to be a bunch of different boards and a bunch of different examples where they should be turned into bluffs. So yeah, maybe she timed out, or maybe she wasn't paying attention or something, or maybe she as she said, she just didn't play this hand the best way.
Hello?
There we go. I was just going to say, whilst we're just waiting for you to get back, just to let everybody know in the chat that whilst the stream is running, for a little while after the stream as well, you can get 50% off Essential by following the link in the chat. And if you guys would also like to join our Discord, we run a Discord together, and we have weekly study sessions just like this, where we look over hands from you guys, if you guys ever want to bring hands. So yeah, was just reiterating the point of turning this into a bluff sometimes, but yeah, I think we can move on.
Great. Now we have sevens. Okay, this hand is quite interesting. This is against decent rag, and he goes for a 1/3 c-bet on the flop. And I've actually recently studied defending on paired boards, blind versus blind. And what's going on here is that, on this flash draw for Queen X, especially in a GG rake structure, so where big blind is supposed to defend a bit tighter, they're not supposed to c-bet very often here. And when they do c-bet, we are supposed to have some small raises, and especially if they over c-bet, which this guy was doing, because I know him, I've played with him a lot, and he was over c-betting in this spot by quite a lot. We are supposed to raise this spot really, really often and really, really mergy for a small size. Because when we raise here and he's over c-betting, he's supposed to call us with a bunch of flash draws, high cards, backdoor flash draws, and so on. So yeah, we're supposed to raise quite mergy for value. And I decided to raise this hand. Anything to add on flop, pre-flop, Paul?
No, yeah, just one thing I would add here is that a lot of players I see as the same as you probably, they see this board of a queen 4-4 the same as queen 4, and it's just drastically different. As you mentioned, we're going to be continuing. We're going to be calling pre-flop with a lot more 4x in our range than villain, and you said that in GG rake structures. It's going to be true, but even in some other formats as well. So I play in some anti-games, and sometimes what you'll see there is when you have to defend the big blind, you're going to be defended much wider than chat. So I think like in normal chats, something like 5-4 off would be a mix, but obviously in an anti-game, you're always going to be defending that. So yeah, it could be even more drastic in some of the games you guys might play.
Yeah, but
so I think
sorry.
it's important to. I was just going to say, I think it's important to recognize the difference between queen 4, where villain has the bigger proportion of trips, compared to queen 4-4, where we have the bigger proportion of trips.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, even on GG, it's going the other way around, because you're not supposed to call anymore those offsuit hands that don't really connect with this board. So I haven't studied, because I put most of my volume there. I haven't studied in a while the higher rake structures, but kind of lost what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is that what you see here is that when a flash draw is present, our c-betting frequency goes down by even like 15-20%. So this board is definitely quite a low frequency bet. Anyway, we decide to raise. I guess you agree with this play?
Yeah, I think this is fine, yeah.
What if we get 3-bet?
I don't expect to get 3-bet a lot, but I would be continuing. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a grim spot against players that if you don't really respect them too much. But if he's range betting on the flop, then he potentially has a lot of hands to 3-bet, right? So yeah, if this guy was mixing on the flop, then I think it would be very close. But if we're confident that this guy's range betting, then yeah, I would just always continue.
I'm not confident he's range betting. I'm just really confident that he's betting way more than he's supposed to. So we get 3-bet, of course. And I think this guy is actually one of the better regs on GG, so I wouldn't say I don't respect him. I think he is capable of doing this with like bluffs as well from time to time. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to expect of him. It's just that his stats look good. He's winning. He seems solid, moderately aggressive. Yeah, I think in this spot, this is still way too good to fold, but it's going to be quite a tough time on later straight. There's a jack, and he now goes for a check. Yeah, again, on one hand, I'm thinking we want to step here pretty often to just to clear our equity just because again we don't really perform well on multiple streets, and also because I don't like I'm obviously haven't studied flop 3-bet spots blind versus blind as much, but I don't really expect most villains to trap here enough. So I think just going here for a small bet kind of does the job well enough. Also don't think we have much showdown value or that we're going to reach showdown all that often. On the other hand, we have a heart, we can sometimes hit on the river, but that doesn't give as much. What would you do?
Yeah, I think it's really close. I think what I would decide here is I think if I start betting this turn, I'm going to be turning my hand into a bluff on basically any river very often. And the reason I'm thinking that is because potentially villain is going to have, as you said, is not going to protect his checking range enough. So I think they're going to continue way too much with their flushes. I think they're going to continue way too much with their full houses as well, and maybe even continue a bunch with 4x, although I'm not sure. So I think we can just check back here and try to realize our equity with pocket sevens. But I think a lot of his range is probably going to be made up of Queen X and maybe some hands that beat pocket sevens here as well. So yeah, I think it's very close whether I don't mind whether we bet or whether we check, but if I bet, I'm probably turning this hand into a bluff.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I was just going to say, and the reason for that is because when we get to this flop and we bet and then we call a 3-bet, like our range is going to be like severely condensed around 4x and flush draws. So the times that we have like pocket sevens with a heart or pocket eights or pocket fives, pocket sixes, I think these hands very often want to be turned into a bluff, because otherwise we're just going to have a range that skews far too heavily into value, because we just have so much so many hearts and 4x.
Yeah, I agree with you. And actually, the more I think about it, I think the more I like bluffing this hand. And obviously, if we bluff the turn, I think it's kind of useless to just bet small here and chuck back the river, because his range is, as you said, still going to have a lot of queen X that might call the turn, but they're going to be put in a tough spot on the river. Or stuff like, I don't know, aces, kings could be in his range sometimes without a heart. Why not?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say there is that the way that I was thinking about it was sort of similar to you, is that the reason that when I bet I'm going to turn this into a bluff on the river as well, just as an added thing, is the times that I bet on the turn, even though I'm going for mostly for protection, like I'm happy, like if he folds, I'm happy. But the times that he calls, I think we always lose on the river, right? Like I don't think we can ever check back river and win. And so that's why I turn into a bluff.
Yeah. What I also wanted to add is thinking twice about the sizing. I just said I would probably bet small here, but I don't think that makes much sense, because as you said, if we're betting here, we're basically wrapping a 4x or flushes, and I'm not sure in theory, but in practice, because we don't expect him to protect his range enough, I think a 4 here is going to be worth 3/4 size, and we don't really have thin value bets. So I think if I bet here, I would use a bigger size, not a small one. What do you think of the sizing?
I think exploitatively that makes a lot of sense. But I would just mostly base my bets here around a block sizing, just because I want to make sure that I can bet I can bet 4x and still get a value bet on the river. And I think it becomes a bit thin if we bet for a bigger size and then we're shoving river. So yeah, I would still continue to use a block size, and I would just have my flushes and 4x plus in that sizing, and then be able to value bet both on the river. I don't mind, as you said, exploitatively maybe going bigger, because we think that he's capping himself a lot. But if you're playing against better players in better pools, I think the way you construct your turn range with the sizing is important, you know.
Yeah, of course. But that's just, in practice in this field, once they have a weaker range, we're going to be allowed to bet bigger. I think I would probably do that.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake I sort of make is not exploiting enough that way in game myself because I think I play in a soft pool as well where players are probably not protecting their ranges here. They probably have way too many Queen X that they way overcall on the turn as well, and even 4x, and then they always fold river. So I think I could be exploiting a little bit more by going for a bigger sizing on turn.
Yeah, I think it's important to. I do that mistake quite often, because I study a solver and then I study a strategy and I get excited about it and how much it makes sense to me in theory, and then, I kind of sometimes forget I'm playing a completely different range. And yeah, for us and everyone, I think it's really important to first think of what your opponent's range is actually in practice. And if you don't know, or for some reason you think you're playing against someone balanced or you don't have a read on that, then okay, think of GTO. But first, I think we should consider making this exploit with that. We should always consider betting a different size against a certain opponent and so on, and not be like GTO bots.
Nice. Let's see what happened then.
I checked back because I wasn't it in this session apparently. Like. Feel like I was playing way too passive. But, it's also, like, I think it's fine, and we sometimes don't realize and put a bit too much pressure on ourselves when we go through hands and be like, I played so bad, why did I make that mistake? But sometimes it is tough to find the best play when you have, like, 6 tables open and 30 seconds to make a decision. So, it's fine. The time to learn is probably off the table, not on it. So yeah, I check back, and now villain goes for quarter, third, a third. Yeah, and I really, 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 really thought of shoving here, because I think this is very often seen value. Like, I don't really see people just 3-betting the flop with there and then checking the turn, going for a 1/3. I mean, it can happen, but I don't think it's very frequent, and it just seems a bit of a face-up, ace-queen / aces, stuff like that. But then I thought, I'm not really rapping much with this line, and I'm not sure if he's aware that of the fact that he's also capped. I'm not sure this is a spot where he's going to overfold, because my line doesn't make much sense, and he's probably aware that he's capped. So I decided just to fold, but looking forward to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So the first thing that I was gonna say before we even saw the river action was well, at least when he blocks, we just get to jam. And the reason I think that is, again, right, is we just spoke about how we like play too theory oriented sometimes, and what that means is that we're going to put ourselves into some spots where we're balanced, even if we're playing against players we shouldn't really balance against. So I think we definitely, like, I know I will, and you probably will as well, like, get to the river with some flushes here, right? Like, you're not going to always bet all your flushes on the river, on the turn, and then you're going to end up on the river with some flushes. You're also going to end up on the river, I guess, sometimes with some 4x. And the reason that happens, right, is because you'll understand that you get here with some weaker queen x, right, that bet flop and called the check raise and check back turn, right? So yeah, I imagine you sometimes protect your range with strong hands. Now, yeah, in this spot, I completely agree with you that I think this is just aces, kings, queen x, maybe even some 4x at some frequency, but it's a range that is just going to be put into a massively tough spot when we jam. I would still take the line, because it's one thing to notice that his range is capped, and like for him to notice that his own range is capped and that he has to call, but it's another thing for him to actually make the call, you know. And I don't think you're as capped as you think you are here. One thing I would just do is maybe just type in the chat before you make the shove, Aces with a hat is a great is a great call. And then just jam, right? So you like pick the top end of his range. And then if he's there with kings with a hat, then maybe he's like, ah, fuck, man, I don't know.
No, I'm not as good as you at chat leveling. I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe it's not even a thing, right? Maybe they just always snap. Maybe they just always snap call me when I do that. Or maybe not. I don't know.
I like the emoticons though. Um,
Yeah, put a sad face, take your whole time bank, and then jam.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of. I think it's kind of close because what I see on on datas, or at least what I saw on GG, which is kind of weird, is that they were once they were betting bigger on the river, they were folding much more than once they bet small. Um, I think it's kind of close, just because like a shove here would be what, like 3x spot, right? So we need him to fold very, very, very often, and like I don't think it's a play that's sprinting here, to be honest. I think it might be plus EV. I don't think it's sprinting. Not sure. Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Yeah, and again, right? If we're not sure if it's printing, but it might be plus EV. We think it might lean towards being high EV or like plus EV. Like bluffs only need to be break even. So if we get like in this spot and we jam, and even if we get called, that's fine, because we're gonna have a lot of we're definitely gonna jam like R4X in this spot, right? And we'll get here sometimes with that. We're gonna jam our flushes as well, and we get here with that. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. But the Lo-Fi Hub in the YouTube chat says Wizard jams your combo on the river as played, and you can mostly block turn. So yeah, I'm gonna
What? I didn't understand that.
Lo-Fi Hub said that Wizards jams our combo on the river as played, and that we can also mostly block on the turn as well with that combo.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Things that we said, really. But yet again, if you've one thing I would notice is when we're reviewing this and we know that you've just come back from having a long break, maybe some like areas of your game that are present but not always there may creep up. So some of this like passivity in some lines might become like a pattern, like because you didn't take that spot with pocket fours, you didn't take the spot here with pocket sevens. I'd say like it's something to be aware of now that we've seen two hand histories, and if we see like a third, then you might have that like underlying tendency. Maybe that like tendency completely goes away when you're in the flow of a routine and you're playing poker, but then you'll recognize that when you take a break next time and come back to the game, that okay, I can be passive sometimes after a break, so let's take some more jams.
Yeah, I don't think usually my tendency is to be too passive, kind of the other way around. I think maybe like I've been in these extremes. I used to play a bit too aggressively at the point that people kind of caught up on that, and then I worked on getting that. Yeah, a bit lower, but it looks like I'm kind of missing the spots. And as you said, it might be due to taking a long break, but like it's definitely good to review this hand and see where I'm making, mistakes, and know what to pay attention to and be aware of in game.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I was just hoping was that we didn't see you call river, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't play the worst, and again, I'm not saying that I would take this like 100 times out 100, but like, maybe you rolled this in game and you were going to do it very often, and you just rolled that. It wasn't this time.
To be honest, I don't really think this is a spot to roll. Like, blame me for that, but I think this play is either plus EV and should be taken pretty much always, because who's going to exploit me for always shoving sevens on this run out in a raise 3-bet spot, blind versus blind, check turn?
It wasn't being said because you might get exploited. It was being said because if you never roll and you just always fold this spot, then you're just not bluffing enough.
No. I think I should always raise this spot. Thinking about it now, not always fold.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, if you always make a pure decision, then maybe you just always like. I'm just saying, maybe you get some people will get into the spot and just always fold, right? Because they think, oh, well, it's low EV or it's negative EV, you know, and they never take the spot. And for me, I think my problem is sometimes I get into these situations and I'd have the tendency to overdo it. So my 5, 6, 7s, 8s, 9s, like whatever I've got in this spot probably gets turned into a bluff. So yeah, one way to control myself sometimes is I'll maybe roll for like 75% jam here. So at least sometimes I'm not doing it.
Yeah, but I don't think you need to control yourself in this spot, because it's not a spot that's going to happen all that frequently, especially against the same player. And if we think they're overfolding here, I really don't see a problem with shoving all of those combos. Because you're also not going to raise them on the flop pure frequency. Like it's a spot that's just not gonna happen all that often. Maybe not even once a month, maybe once a year or something.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I said we should go for the jam. But yeah, as I said, we were talking about like if we think this is like neutral EV or like low EV, you know. We weren't talking about if we think it's a friend. But okay.
Yeah, I think I changed my mind, and it's really hard for me to say this, but I agree with you.
Thanks.
Okay. Should we do one more hand and then call it a session?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, before that, just wanted to remind everyone that during this stream and a bit after it, there's 50% off Run It Once Essentials subscription. So yeah, make sure not to miss out on that, to see more of our videos and beautiful faces.
Yeah, and also if you'd like to join our Discord, I'll put that link in the chat as well.
Yeah, we're looking to run a mentorship program as well, and we're gonna provide discount in the Discord. So if you're interested in that, make sure to join. Okay, so this hand, someone opens in the cutoff, I don't remember who. This is a recreational calling from the small blind, and I decided to call from the button, and I decided to call 5-4 suited in the small blind. It's not like I don't usually play calls here, but in this particular situation, I think I don't really want to fold this hand with a recreational in the pot, although he's short stack, so might not perform as well. The other thing is the open size is small, and the other thing is this guy is short, so if I squeeze here, it might happen quite often that he's just going to shove, and I'm going to have to fold, or that he's just going to fold, and I'd rather play a pot against a recreational player than with 3-bet a really marginal hand against a regular and force the rack out of the pot. So yeah, that's just my thought process here pre-flop. Anything to add, Paul?
Yeah, I think I would just pass up on this spot, to be honest. The reason being is that with villain, quite short stacked. One of the reasons we didn't want to squeeze is because he's short stacked, but I think that's also a reason not to call this hand pre-flop as well. I'd rather call something that is going to dominate his calling range, so something maybe like King Jack off or King Queen off, King 10 off, something like that. I think with this hand here, we're very often, we're going to be four ways, and we're going to be out of position to everybody, and in a situation where we don't get to realize all of our equity because villain 160 is short stacked. I think it can look attractive, obviously, because we have a nice hand and the open is low and we get to play with the recreational. But the rake is high on GG. And yeah, I would like this more if villain 160 was, 80 big blind Steve as opposed to 34 big blind Steve.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But I think what it also depends on is the tendencies of the regulars. So I would say this hand is in this spot where villain is short stack, it's probably close to 0 EV or slightly plus EV. But yeah, definitely not the greatest spot. But I think the more passive these guys are, the better it gets. I know I would definitely not flat here if these guys were two good, really good rags. Or really aggressive rags. But even against passive ones, I agree with you. It's quite marginal.
Yeah, one thing I would also just add though, and this is like a lot for the people in the chats. Most people don't. And what's going on with your mic?
I don't know.
Uh, I think you're moving something.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, one thing that you have to be aware of, and this is the mistake that you often see in live games, is the more people that are in the pot, the less we actually want to join that pot, and that is because how much our equity is going to be split. So it always looks attractive when you're in the big blind and there's like 5 other people in the pot, and you think that you can overcall here. But the more people that are in the pot, you actually should, in theory, be tighter, especially with some portions of your range. Just because your equity is going to be split and your equity realization is going to be extremely low. And that's probably even more so in live games as well, where bigger size bets are used on flops and turns and things like that as well. So yeah, your equity realization will suffer even more. So again, something just to keep in mind in this hand. I think I would like this a lot more if we were in the big blind than the small blind.
Yeah.
And just that answer, Cam Yossetti says, is this cash review? And yes, it's a cash review. So
Yeah. We are, I mean, me, I'm not sure about Paul, but I don't really play anything else. So, you wanted me to fold the hand that would flop trips, didn't you?
well, this is an advanced strat, and something that we highly recommend is if you know you're going to flop the best hand, then you always call, and if you know you're going to not flop the best hand, then you always fold.
Yes, exactly. So, obviously, I'm applying that rule quite well. Okay, now I think there is actually some incentive here to go for a donk. I know, I remember now. This guy was also a fish, so he was a recreational. I think that makes the call much better. Okay, so I think there is some incentive to donk here if you think these guys are going to be really, really passive. But mostly I would prefer going for a check raise. Yeah, check raise. I don't think against recreationals check calling here is all that good. What do you think, Paul?
I don't think I would ever be raising this spot, to be honest. I think I would just be calling, because we basically have the board locked up. There's very few outs for people to improve. So if villain 138 bets, villain 160 calls, I'm just calling. If villain 138 checks and villain 160 bets, I'm just calling, because I think the EV of bringing in the other player in those situations is going to be much higher than the EV of check raising.
Of bringing in the, if this guy calls.
Sorry.
What?
So keeping it. So in this situation, if villain 160 would have called, I think I would just still continue to go for a call. No, sorry. Once villain 160 calls, I think I would go for a check raise. But if villain 138 checked, villain 160 went for a bet, I would just be going for a call.
Okay, yeah. So if this guy checks, this guy bets, you would just go for a call. Yeah, I think that makes more sense. But if they both call, I think check raising is better, and in this situation, I also think check raising is better. Because, like, yes, he's going to have some bluffs, but I think that's less when he bets into 3 players. And secondly, I think if he has an overpair here or stuff like that, we want to control how much money it goes into the pot. Like, we don't want him to keep betting 1/3 and stuff like that. So I think against an overpair, we probably get more value if we check raise here ourselves, because I don't, like, this was, just to make this point, this was not a kind of aggressive whaler or anything. He was some like 44-22 kind of relatively passive recreational. So against those guys, I don't think slow playing trips here makes much sense. What do you think?
Yeah, no, in this situation, I'd also go for a check raise. And I'd build my check raise around, obviously not around 4x. I'd build it around hands that get a lot of incentive by check raising. And hands that are going to be in our range, like pocket 5, 6, 7s, those type of hands.
Yeah. Okay, we go for a check raise. I mean,
yeah, I think I think I might even go smaller than this. Because I'd want to check raise at some frequency, something like ace two. And I want to keep in then a bunch of his dominated range. So I want him to call like queen 10 with a backdoor flush draw or those type of hands,
Yeah, I don't really agree with that. Like if I want to check raise ace deuce here, I can just check raise that smaller and check raise this bigger, because we are still against the recreation. Like I don't want to have a balanced sizing. I can just do.
Sorry, I missed that we were against the recreational. My bad.
Oh.
I thought it was the reg and a recreational, and the recreational folded.
Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning, and then I added, no, this guy was actually also a recreational, and that's why I think the pre-flop call is better. So anyway, we do go for a check raise. I think this size is small enough to keep some like high cards, backdoor flash draws in his range. Maybe we could make it even slightly bigger. So yeah, he calls. Turn is a 6. And I think we have a mandatory continue here. And the reason why I marked this hand is mostly in regards to the sizings I used on each street. So what I know about this guy is that he was relatively passive recreational and had overcalling tendencies. So to me, looking at this spot, I think I like an overbet. Like, we are not really concerned about a batter 4. Like, if he has one, okay, he's just gonna take the money, whatever. And what we basically want is to get the most value from overpairs at this point. I don't think recreationals are folding an overpair here against like any size. Now I wouldn't go all in, but I think I like going for an overbet here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I'd just go for an overbet here. I don't think he's going to fold pocket 8s at this stage.
No. Not sure if you can see that properly, but I want 3/4. Not sure. I don't really like this. Okay, now I know why I marked this hand. It's because I wasn't sure how big I want to go on the river. But like, this is just... I guess this hand kind of shows how big of a mistake is not overbetting the turn, because the main purpose for overbetting here is, of course, to get most value on the turn, but then also to have an SPR on the river where it's comfortable just to shove. And because of that, now we end up in this spot where if we shove, we're not really sure how often we get called by worst. If we don't shove, we're not really sure if we would have been called by like aces, kings, queens, I don't know, some ace jack of clubs for bigger sizing. So yeah, I think to me the mistake in this hand is not overbetting the turn, because we shouldn't really end up in this situation. What do you think about this as played?
Yeah, just put you Cam Musetti said in YouTube, how about block bet river? Specifically to induce.
I don't think this is a spot where we are going to induce a lot of bluffs. Like, he already bet 3 ways into 2 people. He called the check raise. He called the turn bet, which wasn't big enough, but it wasn't a small bet either. So I think his range that he's going to end up here mostly with bluff catchers. I think it's quite difficult for him to have a bluff, and he could have hands like, I don't know, 6-5 that could be bluff candidates. But I already mentioned that we think this guy is going to be stationary and passive. So this is not the kind of guy I would choose lines to induce bluffs with. I think that could be great against some opponents, but not in this spot and not against this guy. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the main talking point about this was the villain was quite passive, so that means we want to put the money in ourselves. And this as well isn't the type of board where there was infinite draws on flops and turns. I think it's quite defined what his range looks like, and I'm not sure that that's gonna start betting on river. So yeah, just going for value ourselves. And Wojtek said in the chat, if he's passive and overcalling, Yeah, he still bets one pairs into 3 ways. I'd go for a 12 big blind raise on the flop. I doubt he's happily playing queen jack suited this way, so just build a pot against over pairs. And yeah, I sort of agree. I mean, I'm not sure if I'd use 12 big blinds. But I agree in going much bigger, potentially against recreational, who's just not going to fold any over pairs.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think I think this is again, a hand where if I look back on what I said, my thought process might be a bit inconsistent because first I think he's passive, but then as you said, he's betting 3 ways into two people. I probably shouldn't choose a size to target those weak hands as backdoor flush draws.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. That's probably quite a good point. And again, on this river, as played, I wasn't super sure what size to pick. But then I thought, well, if I think he's overcalling and I know he's a recreational, he might be quite inelastic in this spot. And I thought the highest TV size is probably a shove. Because yes, we're definitely not going to get called as often as if we bet smaller, but when we get called, we make way more money. So, yeah, I think this is the size to pick. Although the SPR should have been smaller if we played this hand well. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd just probably just always be going for the shove here. And I mean, he's a recreational, right? So you just never know what you're going to see on the river. You can see some weird hero calls, and I think if you put this in a solver, something like Jack X or even Jack X and Queens, Kings, Aces, they're probably like bluff catchers. They're mixed anyway, so he's probably overcalled in that portion of the range as it is. So yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be super surprised to see him calling nines here sometimes. I really wish that turn wasn't a 6 because that completes some draws at least, but. Yeah, anyway, he folded. I wanted to mostly talk about the sizes. So I think these were all the hands that we're going to review today. Do you want to add anything, Paul?
Tequila just asked, what do you think about betting something like 69 big blinds on river, so as to not trigger the fishes all in alarm?
It's something I heard about. I think it works against some people, doesn't work against others. I'm not sure. I think it has merit against some, but I don't have any scientific proof for that. I don't know. Do you do that, Paul?
No, I actually haven't really heard of that before myself. I don't know if it's a thing. Let us know. For sure.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you do that or not. I actually, sorry to interrupt, I actually had one hand. I actually used it in a few spots where I've seen notes on someone, and I think it's quite mad that against some people, it actually does seem like if you leave 3 big blinds behind and you bet 97 instead of 100, it just snap call you with some random hand. And I think the reason for that is that a lot of recreationals actually do that because maybe they have just one buy-in on the side and they really, really want to play. And they're like, I don't really want to bust, but I really want to call. I really want to make him fold. And they do that and just leaving very little behind so they don't bust. So maybe they project that onto you. So I think it makes sense against some people, yeah.
If that's the case against even something like 20% of recreationals, then the highest EV strat is probably to just always make this 75 big blinds, right?
Yeah. Maybe 73 or something.
yeah, just something like that. But yeah, that was really good. Thanks for bringing the hands, and thanks to everyone who joined and for the comments in the YouTube chat as well. Kamisetti just said, I've started overfolding to less than all in jams. To be honest, seems like they always have it when they leave 5 behind. So yeah, maybe it's something where the more you play, people start to fold when they see the less than all in sizing. But maybe some recreationals do get triggered by the non all in sizing.
Yeah, again, it's something that definitely works against some people, and maybe against some people it just triggers them to fold more. So I'm not sure it's a good play overall. But
I think maybe if you see a recreational do it as a bluff, you see them go for like 55 big blinds into 60 big blind pot and then fold for the extra 5 big blind jam, because you see some things like that happen sometimes. Maybe make a note of that, because maybe that's the guy, and that one note could potentially give you a lot of EV in a future spot.
Okay, thanks and everyone for joining. If you want to keep in contact with us, please join our Discord, and also you can message us on Run It Once. And looking forward to see you on the next stream. We're trying to keep it consistent, so most likely it would be next week, the same time. Good luck.